Welcome to The People's View, a program dedicated to discussing local, state, and national issues and their effect on the American people. The People's View provides a platform for state representatives and national figures to present their viewpoint. Whether it's social, economic, or financial topics, you'll hear it on The People's View.
Hello, welcome to People's View. I'm Carl Seidel, and my co-host is Peter Silva. And today we're going to talk to Jennifer Horn, who's the chair of the GOP for the state.
Thank you very much. Good to be with you guys today.
Great to have you here.
Yeah, nice to talk to you. Tell us about your organization, your objectives, Jennifer. You're now got a whole,
my organization? The entire Republican Party now is my organization.
That's it.
It has been a couple of months. It's been about 2 months now since the election, and things are going very well. I'm very excited about what we've been able to do in a short time. I'm even more excited about what we're going to do over the next, through the end of next year. There's a lot going on. Right out of the gate, my responsibility, one of the things we talked about the last time I was here was my responsibility is to be the messenger for the party. And unfortunately, what we've seen coming out of Concord from the other side has given us ample opportunity to draw the distinctions between the way the Republicans look at the world and the way that Democratic leadership looks at the world. So we've been very involved in messaging and getting the word out, making sure the Republican voice is heard. We've been involved in organizing and rebuilding kind of the party staff and bringing new people in to add to the good people that are already there, and starting to make some of those technological changes and trying to start the process to make some advancements in the way that we implement technology that we talked about after the unfortunate loss of November 2012.
But you think that you got more to do yet, or you?
Oh my gosh, there's so much to do.
So much to do.
So much to do, so little time.
Yeah.
I mean, you tell me what you want to start with. I mean, the technology obviously it's a long-term project. It's an expensive project, so it's just a matter of day by day, figuring out what we can budget and what we can bring in and the best way to use it. Which pieces do we want to look at to upgrade first? But everything we do in that office is about getting Republicans elected. It's, and in this case, it's in November 2014, obviously. So whether we're talking about upgrading technology or hiring good, strong professional staff, it's all about being focused on getting the next generation of Republican candidates elected to office in the next cycle, which brings us to messaging, which is such an important part of all this, is making sure that our neighbors across New Hampshire know what we stand for as Republicans and know who we are. And we have faced a number of legislative issues already since the beginning of my term anyway, that I think draw good, clear distinctions for people. Governor Hassan has unfortunately offered a budget that's grossly irresponsible. I think everybody in the state by now knows that she's built her budget on $80 million of licensing fees for casinos, which happen to be illegal in the state of New Hampshire. And I say all the time that she's using pretend money to fund real programs. And that's catastrophic. That's the wrong way to go. We know that it would seem as if casinos are probably closer to passing than they've ever been before in the state of New Hampshire. I don't know how that's going to work out, but I do know that you don't build a budget on money that doesn't really exist. So we've been really concerned about that and trying to make sure we talk about that. As we were just saying off the air, the gas tax, the Democratic-sponsored gas tax passed today. Which is going to be an extraordinary burden for many families across the state. I'm starting to feel sometimes like there's a war on the poor out there being executed by the other side. When you think about the folks who are going to most suffer under the impact of something like a gas tax, and we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of increased taxes over the entire program. So there have been a lot of opportunities, unfortunately, to talk about the Republican Party as the fiscally responsible party, the party of economic prosperity for everybody, the party of limited government and low taxation. And but we're going to continue doing that and be as assertive as we can with that voice.
Well, I've seen a lot of your press releases, and you're getting some newspaper coverage. fortunately, I
Well,
guess.
I think that's an important part of my job.
Yeah,
You know,
right.
it's, you know, you say you're getting a lot of newspaper coverage. Well, we have to think about, where do people get their news? Where do people get their information? It's online. It's in the newspaper. It's on MUR. It's from programs like this one. And one of my responsibilities is making sure that as the party in the minority, that we hold the majority accountable, that we are, you know, honestly distributing information, that we make sure that voters know there's an alternative. They're not stuck with what we have. If they don't happen to like the idea of hundreds of $millions in increased gas taxes, there's another way. There's another choice you can make next time. And making sure that the Republican voice is heard as these issues are being discussed is part of my job.
And you have to say it over and over where they could say it once. I mean, no one can convince me otherwise that it's not lopsided as to which side gets
Sure.
more coverage. You know, the perfect example is this: if we had based our budget, if we had a Republican governor and based it on money that didn't exist, $80 million worth, it would have been, they would have the blimp going around, you know, talking about it every day. I mean, it's
Right.
outrageous.
So, well, and that's why I'm trying to be, you know, the word I use always is aggressive. I think there's a difference between being aggressive and being obnoxious, but we're trying to be really aggressive with making sure that our message is heard. And I've run campaigns, I've run federal campaigns, and I now am involved in messaging in this position. And what I've always said is, it's not, you know, we can't ever expect that the media is going to be our friend. And it's not their job to be our friend. And if they're being somebody else's friend or they're not, whatever. Our job is to make sure our message gets out, whatever the circumstances are. So there are all different challenges we have to overcome, and sometimes that's just another one. I think we've been really effective at overcoming those challenges, though, over the last couple of months, and it's something we intend to build on going forward.
And you're working well with the legislature, as I understand it. You're meeting
Trying
with
to.
them every week.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. We've got strong working relationships between the party and the staff in my office and the staff in Senator Bragdon's office and Representative Chandler's office work very closely together, appropriately so. And I think that Senator Bragdon and Representative Chandler are working incredibly hard to make sure that good legislation at least gets a chance. Now, the good news is that, and maybe this is, you know, maybe this is the intention of the voters overall. We've got this balance right now in that the House the Democrats own the House, the Republicans just barely own the Senate. Unfortunately, the Democrats own the corner office. So, you know, but we look at the Senate as kind of a firewall, hopefully, for some of the most important issues. And I can't guess ahead of time always exactly what they're going to do. But I think that, you know, we're working awfully hard to make sure that we have a cohesive message. That, you know, we talk all the time as a party about the fact that there are issues that we disagree on. We don't all agree 100% about anything. We never do. But there are those core issues that define who we are as Republicans that we can generally all or 90% of us be on board with. And those are the issues that we're trying to focus on. And I've been very gratified that Gene Chandler and Peter Bragdon have been very easy to work with and are as committed as I am to making sure that the Republican message gets out there.
I think too, Jennifer, if you stay on, you touched on something earlier, which has really been in my craft since I've been in politics and even before. The way that we've been painted as, you know, the ogres that are against the poor and everything, and almost every single bill you see that comes up, every tax increase,
Right.
almost always affects the poorest of poor first.
Right.
And for some reason, we got painted as we're the ones doing that. We're never the ones raising taxes.
Right.
So,
well, it's interesting to look at some of the key issues that the Democratic leadership are offering right now as part of the budget and outside of the budget as well. An increase on the cigarette tax. It's really hard to defend cigarettes. You know, nobody wants to be for cigarettes, but we know that statistically it is minorities and the lower income individuals who by far are much more greatly impacted by a cigarette tax than anybody else in society is. The folks who can least absorb it, who are least able to absorb it. Then we look at the gas tax. That's going to hit every single human being in our state. You can't avoid it. You can't decide I'm not going to drive because everything you purchase is going to be impacted by the gas tax. Everything that's transported, everything, the cost of everything gets impacted when we make it more expensive to transport people and goods. So, you know, some of the estimates, or a couple of weeks ago as they've been debating this, was that when it's fully implemented, it will cost the average family another $3 per fill-up. And imagine if you work in Boston and you're filling up 3 times a week. And let's multiply that out over a year, over 4 years, over 10 years. There's a significant cost there. And it's not fair that it is not fair to the people to have leadership in Concord or Washington who think that it is more important to expand their reach at the cost of the middle and low income families than it is to be responsible and make sure that they're protected. You know, we talk about the war, and I use the phrase the war on the poor. Another great example coming out of Concord is the Education Scholarship Tax Fund, an extraordinary piece of legislation that passed last time around that finally allowed equal educational opportunity. We haven't had equal educational opportunity in our state, and this is something that's privately funded that will allow middle income and low income families to access scholarship funds and actually have some choice in where their children are educated. So if your local public school is not the best educational environment for your child, you can finally have a choice and have some funds to help make it possible to get the best place for your kids. And what it did for us that I thought we all on both sides of the aisle were committed to was it was kind of open the door to get us past the era of where your educational outcome was determined by your zip code or determined by what neighborhood you live in. But right out of the gate, in her budget address back at the beginning of her term, the governor made it clear she wants to overturn the law that essentially
without giving it a chance.
Never gave it a chance.
Yeah.
250 students have already applied for scholarships. Over $150,000 in private funds has already been raised. We haven't even had a chance to implement it yet. And she says, I'm against equal educational opportunity.
We know why that is, though. The major reason is one thing. It's called the teachers union. And why don't, you know, I think people need to be exposed more to that. That's, you know, of course, we all know the right to work thing that I went through last term, but that's a big thing. And
Right.
that's what makes a lot of these votes go the way they go. And I think people need to be aware
There's
of
a
that.
tremendous amount of influence in the legislative process. There's no question about it, from unions and from other special interests along the way. And at the very least, we hope that voters are exposed to it and know what's going on so they know what their representatives
There's a
are
lot
doing.
of talk up there that actually some people have a conflict of interest that they vote on this question.
Well, you know, I don't know specifically who you're referring to, but I can tell you that I feel very strongly that it's important to make the distinction between teachers and teachers' unions,
Yes.
or workers and any union leadership and union representation. Because, and Pete, you know this, you raised your kids here in Nashua, so did I. We have great teachers in our school system. No, and I think the vast majority of them have a real heart for children and a heart for education, and that's incredibly important. But this bill was about making sure that every student could be in a classroom with a teacher who had that kind of commitment and dedication, because we know that not all of our students are in the best educational circumstances to meet their needs. And it's great that people like Ray Buckley can go on Channel 9 and say, hey, my family, you know, has people that go to private school. My family has people that go to parochial schools, but we pay for it ourselves. Well, good for you. I'm glad that you can afford that. But not everybody can.
Again,
not everybody can.
These are the people that need the help to get
Right.
into it, and this law would take care of that. And it doesn't hurt the school's budget that
it doesn't impact the school's budget.
Actually,
They still get
proportionally,
their-
they gain.
Exactly, and that's what people have to understand. What the details are. It's easy to listen to an 8-second, soundbite from somebody, or they come up with a clever motto. But that's why I feel so strongly that it is the Republican Party that fights to preserve opportunity for everyone. This is about equal opportunity. And our friends across the aisle are often talking to us about equal opportunity in a lot of different areas. But if we can't guarantee equal opportunity at the educational level, especially elementary school when kids are getting their start, then a lot of these other things don't matter, because that child's never going to be able to overcome not having the educational environment that was best for him or her at such a young age. So I would like to hope that we can draw them into this equal opportunity fight as well. But it's going to be a struggle. The governor's made it clear that she is committed to repealing this.
Well, let's hope that doesn't succeed. I hope that there's. I see a few of the Democrats are being vocal about letting it go through. They at least give it a year's try.
Oh, absolutely. And there are a number of legislators who did not originally support it, who have made it clear now that they won't support the repeal because it's just bad governance.
Right.
You don't. There's always somebody's in the majority. It's Republicans or Democrats, and we know. That changes from sometimes from one session after right to the next. But and it's no fun being in the minority. We all get that. But it is bad governance to decide that when you come into office or when you come into the majority, that you're just immediately going to repeal everything the previous majority did just last year, just out of spite. They're doing it with voter ID law. We finally got some important protections on the book to preserve the integrity of the ballot box, and without even giving that the opportunity to fully implement and to see what a difference it might make at the ballot box on election day. That it's got to be repealed. We call it repeal-a-palooza. Everything the Republicans pass that we don't like, we're immediately going to repeal, without looking at whether or not it was appropriate, whether or not it's been implemented, whether or not the people have an interest in it. With over 250 families applying for the Education Scholarship Fund, clearly there's an interest in the state of New Hampshire for this, for that issue.
And the companies that support it.
And the companies that support it, exactly. It's again, fully funded by private entities. So that sort of thing is disappointing, but there's always somebody in the minority whose job it is to hold the majority accountable, and that's what we happen to be doing right now.
The voter ID thing, we just need to get that message out more, because any normal thinking person realizes in the society we live in, it's not too much to ask to have someone prove who they are.
Well,
I think
that you'll find
ridiculous.
when you go out and speak to average folks on the street that there's little to no opposition to this, that it really is a political argument that opposes it. And when you listen to how the opposition expresses, the language they use to express their opposition, it's clear that it's a politically motivated issue. We need the one sacred thing that we have in our democratic republic is our vote, and if that cannot be protected, then then that becomes a house of cards. The whole thing starts to crumble if there's no integrity on election day, and it's a simple thing to have to show. There is no. Every single human being in our state has to show identification for something. You cannot travel without it. You cannot make certain purchases without it. You cannot get a checking account without it. You cannot get services from the state without a picture ID. You can't get your child's ears pierced without proving that you're an adult who's responsible for that person. I mean, there are so many things that you have to be able to prove who you are to do it. It's foolish. It's neglectful of the great foundation our founding fathers laid for us to suggest that the ballot box is not worthy of that.
It's not difficult to get the picture ID.
Of course not. Of course not. I have a son who's over 16 who works full time and does not drive. He went down to the DMV, got his, he has what looks like a driver's license, but it's his picture ID. He can work. He can file his taxes. He can. Prove who he is if he's, out and about with friends. And, it's ridiculous. It is a ridiculous argument, and it's too important an issue for us to just let it slide.
Can't let it slide. Because it really, just to be a wise guy, I say it all the time, if tomorrow we could convert all the unions to be Republicans and all the minority voters, the Democrats immediately would be for voter ID. Instantly.
Well, there are a lot of things that I think that people will flip very quickly for in the political world. And I think what I would like to see, especially on issues like this that are so important and like I said, kind of sacred to the way that our Constitution and the way that we live, what I'd like to see is that enough people become informed of the issues and informed of the consequences so that they really can rise up and their voices are heard over the political savvy of some of the folks involved here.
When we did the vote, Carl, you were there. The big vote was to override the veto. When we had that vote, there was not one dissenting Democrat. And as you said, all the Democrats that live in areas, for example, my ward, is a good example of that. I can walk down the street and talk to Democratic voters that are going to say, yeah, voter ID is fine.
Exactly.
So
exactly.
they're not
It's a
representing their
political issue.
constituents.
It's not an issue of the people.
And
Right.
the voters should know about
Right.
that.
That's what I'm here for.
And that's
I'm
what
doing
I'm
the best I
talking
can,
about.
we're
Pete.
trying to
That's what
do.
I'm talking about.
And that's
what
what
we're
we're
trying
going
to
to have
do,
to do
by
is
the
keep
way.
making the
Thank
people aware of what's happening out there
Right.
politically.
Well, and that's why, cable access television is so important. What a great opportunity for the city of Nashua to have something like this. And Republicans aren't the only ones using this outlet.
No.
It's not just conservatives, or and it seems like we're living in in a world where things like newspapers are starting to go by the wayside. We know that a lot of the hard copy media is struggling, but between things like cable access television and the extraordinary access to information on the internet, there's no excuse for us not getting our message out. It's not enough to sit here and say, oh, national TV station, news stations are liberal or something. I'm tired of people talking about it and giving excuses. We have a good message. We are the right choice, and it's our job to make sure we have those conversations in a place where voters can see that and hear it and get that message from us, and be able to win their trust and their support before Election Day rolls around.
Good. Well, Jennifer, it's been nice talking to you. I think we've
Wow,
run
that was
out of
fast.
time. Yeah.
We didn't talk about the Growth and Opportunity Project or anything.
Oh,
we'll
right.
have to come
about
back
that.
again.
You definitely.
Good.
We should schedule for a routine visit, actually.
That sounds ugly. Like to clean my teeth or what? That sounds like a dentist. I would be happy to. It's always a pleasure to come in.
Good. We'll have to work on that.
Great.
And thank you all for listening in. Don't forget that The People's View is sponsored by the Nashua Republican City Committee. If you want to find out more about us, go to NashuaGOP.org. And if you want to come to our meetings for the second Thursday of the month at the Crown Plaza at 6:30 in the evening, we have a number of speakers that you might find very interesting if you come down. And thank you again for listening in.